Hello friends, I hope you're doing well. Tonight's audio will be a little bit different. As many of you are probably aware, I've made some weird stuff over the years. Belovedly weird. I love to draw inspiration from anywhere I can. Sometimes I like to challenge myself to create based on something that, at first glance, or maybe even second glance, you wouldn't think would be suitable. I just think it's fun. Recently I made a role play based on a pretty obscure horror book, Gone to See the Riverman. And on that, I got a few requests for book recommendations. So I thought that maybe it would be nice to make a video for it. Many of you seem to enjoy and request more chat videos like we've been doing for the seasons. But those sorts of casual audios feel very outside of my current wheelhouse. I'm very much a performer when it comes to my content, and I struggle with improvising and just being off the cuff. So this may be a way to compromise. It gives me a structure to work with, and it gives you more of the casual chats that you've been asking for. We will see how it goes, so be sure to let me know if you think it's a good idea. So, on to the books. For the past couple years, I've been finding my way back to my love of reading. In my youth, I could devour books faster than the ink could dry. But as I got older, things changed. I was too busy to read, too tired after long days of work. My free time would just go into making videos or just doing all the tasks that come with everyday life. I simply fell out of it. 3 years ago, I think 3 years, my New Year's resolution had been to read 5 books. That was it, just 5. And I did it. But it was hard. I came in right under the wire. But I did it. The following year it was one every other month or so, and then once a month, and then this year it was sometimes one every 2 weeks, sometimes one a week, and sometimes more if I really got into it. But I stopped counting. And I feel so grateful that I have been able to rekindle that love for reading. It can still be difficult to find all the time that I'd like, but I've learned to take it in moments and work it into my routine. I wanted to preface this whole thing by telling you that because I do not think that the struggle I went through is uncommon. So many of my friends have shared a similar experience. Perhaps you've gone through it or you're in it right now. It's sad. You know, it breaks your heart to feel like there's this chasm between you and something that you loved so dearly. Something you probably still love, but just can't reach right now. but you can get back to it. It might take some time. It took me 3 years to build back up to reading like I used to. But it can be done. You can do it. My advice is anytime you feel that spark, even if it's so tiny, no bigger than a firefly, listen to it. If you follow that light, if you feed it, it will grow stronger. And if you can't see a spark, then collect your kindling. Make it present in your life by listening to reviews or talking about the books that were your favorite. I'd certainly love to hear about some of your favorite books. But hopefully you understand my meaning. Collect your kindling so when the spark ignites, it will have something to latch onto. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself grace. I know you have the power to get where you want to. Alright, well, let's keep going. So on the Gone to See the Riverman video, I was asked for more horror and sci-fi recommendations. I admittedly have not read very much science fiction. If you know of a good place to start, I'd be interested to hear that. But I do have one book that I read that I think lands pretty well in the middle of horror and sci-fi that I'll talk about. And the rest will be horror books. I didn't expect to be giving reviews, so I didn't really take notes or have too many specifics. So my memory might be a bit shaky when it comes to execs. But I'll do my best. I will start, of course, with Gone to See the Riverman, written by Christopher Triana. Mr. Christopher has quite a few books under his belt, but this is the first one that I've read. His about says, and I'm paraphrasing, Christopher is a splatterpunk award-winning author who has written many horror and crime thriller books. He has been published in many languages and has received praise from multiple critics and lives in a cold, dark place somewhere in New England. Now, the way that I will structure these chats is I will first give you a mostly spoiler-free review, and then I will give you a warning if I move on to more specifics, in case you're interested in reading it for yourself. However, before any of that, the most important thing that I will tell you is if you are thinking about reading this book, you need to review its trigger warnings. This book does talk about some things that go beyond what you might consider standard horror expectations. I am not going to be providing you with these because I think that it may be upsetting to even hear about these subjects brought up. So do your due diligence. It's never a bad idea to do that with any media you consume, but this book especially. Protect yourself. Take care of yourself. You know where your limits are and what is best for you. Alright, so this book is pretty short. It's 165 pages. It's about a woman Lori, who has an obsession with a man convicted of killing more than 20 women. She writes to him, she visits him, their relationship is already pretty established by the beginning of this book. One day he asks her to go to his cabin, deep in the woods, and retrieve a key. Take it to a mysterious figure known as the Riverman. She accepts, and on this trip she brings along her sister who has a mental disability. Lori is the primary caretaker of her sister and was unable to leave her behind. And now that's the whole plot of it. Now, the best way I can describe this book, the vibe of it, is a backwoods Silent Hill. And that is probably my favorite thing about it, and probably its biggest selling point for me. The book doesn't market itself this way, and I don't even know if that's intentional, but I think the blend of it works beautifully if you like the visuals of Silent Hill, the otherworldliness of it, and the idea of it backdropped in a southern or Appalachian landscape, then you will probably like this book. Okay, now I'm going to go into a bit more specifics. I'm going to discuss spoilers, so if you don't want to hear those, then skip ahead, come back later, or fall asleep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Continuing on with the Silent Hill thread, those stories were often characters coming face to face with their pasts and their traumas, and they either atone and survive, or they don't. This is Lori's Silent Hill. Through the book, we uncover more and more about her past as she pushes deeper into this other world. Lori does not beat her Silent Hill. It's something that I find so compelling about her character is that she is not remorseful about anything she has done. In fact, she doesn't even recognize that she has done anything wrong, despite the brutality and cruelty that she has inflicted on her family and on her sister. She is not redeemed, and there is no hero. The Riverman is one of my favorite monsters, creatures I've seen in a while. It's uncertain exactly what he is. The folklore surrounding him suggests he's a type of devil or demon. But his twist is that he never asks you for anything. He doesn't do anything to you. He is just there, and you decide what you're willing to do to get to him. You make that choice, and if you manage to reach him, he will grant you your wish, because at that point he doesn't have to do anything. The story says he will turn your soul as sour as his own. But in my opinion, he doesn't actually do that at all. You have to journey into the darkest parts of yourself to find the Riverman. And there is this twisted sense of freedom in bearing your soul. You unlock the shackles of your humanity, and most folks just don't bother putting them back on. It's a great exploration into the darkness of human capability. The next book I will be talking about is, at the time of putting this together, my latest read. This is The Only Good Indians, a novel by Stephen Graham Jones. This book is actually a New York Times bestseller. Among other things, it got a lot of awards, and it is a really hot topic in the literature communities. Or at least it was. So I was pretty excited to read it. It didn't come out this year. It was published in 2020. The author, Mr. Jones, has won multiple prestigious awards for his work, including Independent Publishers Award for Multicultural Fiction and a Bram Stoker Award. He's an English professor at the University of Colorado Boulder. Interestingly, my copy of this book came with a book club section in the back. It has discussion and guided reading prompts, which I thought was very cool. It was fun to go through them. For additional context, this book and the characters refer to themselves as Indian, so I may use that language only when directly referencing it. When it comes to real life, it's always necessary to refer to people appropriately by what they wish to be called, either by their general consensus or something else if someone has asked you specifically to use something different for them. So the book follows 4 Blackfeet American Indian men who are being hunted by an entity looking for revenge for something they did in their youth. These childhood friends are helpless as the culture and traditions they left behind catch up to them in a violent, vengeful way. There is an incredible amount of cultural reference in this book. It would take me an entire video of only discussing this book to go over them all and talk about how it all ties together. It's a fascinating exposition and a look into something outsiders wouldn't be familiar with, and I imagine very validating for those insiders who share these lived experiences. I think horror and culture wind together so intrinsically, and they complement each other so well, and that concept is perfectly displayed here. But since that aspect of it would be a much longer discussion, I'm only going to talk about the book as it is without going too far into that, just as a story. So aside from the use of cultural identity and horror, which was well done, I did not like this book as much as I wanted to. It is written in this flow of consciousness style that sometimes feels choppy and muddy. There were many times I had to reread paragraphs to figure out what was going on. Also, this book has a very intense obsession with basketball. Through the whole book, there is so much basketball. At one point, there is over 10 pages detailing a single basketball game. Now, I did learn, thanks to this book, about how indigenous folks have a great passion for the sport and even their own style of playing, which is often called res ball. So I do understand why it's included, and I do think that its inclusion is a good choice. However, the extent of how much it is used, especially in one of the most pivotal moments of the story, comes off as silly, for lack of a better word. Okay, now I'm going to continue, but using more spoilers. So once again, if you plan on reading this book, skip ahead, click away, or fall asleep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will say that the monster in this, well, quote unquote monster in this book, is very unique. I thought I had it pegged early on, and I think it played on that expectation nicely. It evolved into something else. The creature that hunts them is the spirit of a pregnant elk they killed on an illegal hunting trip, who is exacting revenge for herself, her baby, and the other slain members of her herd. Interestingly, the herd has this collective living memory. It's a complete reflection of the men's own tribe. The elk is also the only perspective that is told in the first person. And you hear more and more from her as the story progresses, until her thoughts are interwoven into the prose, only distinguished by the first person perspective. I actually like this. I thought it was clever. It was a way to build connection to the character, and by the end you definitely can sympathize for her. This book was not structured the way I expected it to be, which is not inherently a bad thing, but I did feel very unsatisfied by the end of it. The first segment, you read a descent into madness type situation, and it was done pretty well. It was eerie, it was moody, it was my favorite part of the book. I expected it to take those elements and keep heightening and escalating them for each man who would come after. But that's not what happens. I will say that I understand why these choices were made, or at least, I think I do in my own opinion, and I won't even say that they're bad. They just weren't to my taste, which is fine. That totally happens. I do not think that this book is scary. I definitely expected it to be, and there are moments that are beautifully, eerily done. There's a touch of thriller and a touch of gore, but none in abundance. The backdrop of these socioeconomic issues and the inescapable trap of generational trauma and poverty is the real horror here. This book is very thoughtful, but not very fictionally frightening, if you get what I mean. If you're interested in reading something that leans more heavily on the literature side, the academia side, then I do think you would probably like it. The last book I'll go over tonight is Prey by Michael Crichton, whose name you may immediately recognize from his most famous work, Jurassic Park. Extremely famous author. I don't think I need to go in depth about his accomplishments. He wrote Jurassic Park. But he wrote quite a few other books too, including this one. This book is part horror, part science fiction. So, science horror, maybe. As I mentioned, I haven't read too many sci-fi books. Definitely nothing high sci-fi. So I am open to recommendations. This book is a little older, published in November 2002, so almost 20 years exactly. But it holds up extremely well. In fact, it may even be more relevant today than it was 20 years ago, which is always a mark of an extremely well done story, I think. Now, it has been a few months since I read this one, so I don't recall all of the details, but there's still plenty to talk about. This is the only book I have read from Mr. Crichton, but it was very good. For the summary, I'm just going to read you directly from the back. In the Nevada desert, an experiment has gone horribly wrong. A cloud of nanoparticles, micro-robots, has escaped from the laboratory. This cloud is self-sustaining and self-reproducing. It is intelligent and it learns from experience. For all practical purposes, it is alive. It has been programmed as a predator. It is evolving swiftly, becoming more deadly with each passing hour. Every attempt to destroy it has failed, and we are the prey. Reading this book felt like watching a Black Mirror episode, and I mean that in the most positive way. It follows a man who has been a stay-at-home father and his wife who is working on this big secret project out in the desert. When the experiment goes wrong, they bring him in to help. I love stories that use fiction to discuss the dangers of technology. Technology is expanding so rapidly that it's not hard to imagine us losing control of it. Already, I don't think our grip is as tight on it as it should be. So, I think it makes these stories doubly scary, because you can imagine them happening. It's fascinating how things that used to be science fiction are now so close to or are science fact. And some of them so commonplace that we don't even think about it. So it isn't hard to imagine the same is true for science horror. Once again, I'm going to continue using more spoilers. So if you plan on reading the book, skip ahead, click away, or fall asleep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I won't really go too in depth with this one because it has been a while, but there were 2 major horrors that this cloud of nanoparticles presented. Well, 3, I guess. The first being that it existed at all, that it had the ability to learn and the ability to kill. The second was the threat this swarm posed that was treated as sort of like it was a plague. The fear of it growing and branching out. If it left, they would never be able to contain it. And the third, which is later revealed, is that it attaches itself to people. Almost like a demonic possession in a way. There is this body horror aspect to the bots, where they don't just kill you but cling to you like a parasite, which inevitably kills you, despite its promise to make you stronger. The idea that we can form a symbiotic relationship with technology can be a fine line to walk and hard to keep upright. It's the idea that you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I think even in our own modern technology, you see a lot of similar progress, specifically when it comes to AI. So I think the warning is as relevant now as it ever was. I definitely recommend this book if those sorts of questions often rattle around in your brain like it does mine. And that is where I will stop for the night. I have a few more I was going to talk about, but this has already gone on longer than I expected it to. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I enjoyed putting this together. If you've ever read any of these books, let me know your thoughts. Everyone always has their own opinions and interpretations of stories, and I think that's part of the fun. Have you read any books lately that you would recommend? If so, I'd love to hear about them. Okay, until next time.